Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the noon news from Montana's news leader.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on your MTN Statewide News this Thursday. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, today, state health officials report a big jump in confirmed COVID-19 cases across Montana. A total of 14 positives, the largest single-day increase in about a month. We told you about 5 of them in Bighorn County late yesterday. Now, the state now adding 8 positive cases in Gallatin County and 1 in Yellowstone. Well, there could soon be more because Montana will begin statewide testing this weekend of individuals who are asymptomatic for COVID-19, and it's free. The testing is through an initiative by Governor Steve Bullock and will be paid for by the state of Montana. Now, this kind of screening test is for people who do not have symptoms and do not have any known exposure to COVID. Now, the hope is that this screening will give public health a better idea of the prevalence of COVID-19 in local communities and in the state. Unlike the deep nasal swab, this testing is non-invasive. It only requires a swab of the lower nostril, and test results are expected to take about 5 days. Well, the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services is easing its grip on Montana's restaurants and bars. It has now published additional guidance that allows restaurants, bars, and breweries to stay open an hour later and let customers sit on stools at the bar. The initial guidance mandated that they close at 11:30 p.m. Well, the new rules, which maintain social distancing and strong sanitation measures, go into effect tomorrow. Legislation to help small businesses is now heading to the president's desk for final approval. The measure will make it easier for business owners to use money from the Paycheck Protection Program. The original requirement that 75% of a loan must be used for payroll will drop down to 60%. There will also be more time allowed to spend it while still being eligible for forgiveness. That window widens from 8 weeks to 24. President Trump is expected to sign the legislation into law. Well, protests in Missoula continue each day following the death of George Floyd. Protests have entered their 7th day on the Missoula County Courthouse lawn. MTN's Katie Miller spoke to the mayor, who says these protests are not a threat to public safety.
Another challenging week in the United States and in many communities around the country.
This is the 6th day in a row protesters are lining up in Missoula, and while there have been a few counter-protesters, Missoula Mayor John Engen says he believes the demonstrations will remain nonviolent.
Engen says there is a plan in place just in case violence erupts.
There's just so much going on in the world today. It's really hard to know.
In response to concerns that militant left-wing groups will disrupt Missoula's peaceful protests,
we're prepared, but we don't perceive a threat today.
He says he hopes these demonstrations will bring about change.
Violence unprovoked against any human being is not the business of a police force.
In a city council meeting on Monday, Engen said the city shares a collective outrage and concern over police brutality.
We can always get better, and we are going to do that.
On Tuesday, protester Jay Matson told KPAX he does feel safe in Missoula, but knows what it's like to feel unsafe.
When I turned 16, I got my learner's permit to drive, and 2 weeks after I got that is when I first almost got shot by the police.
Matson says that instance made him feel like he has no control.
You realize that your life is 100% out of your hands and in the hands of somebody else.
Engen says the Missoula Police Department plans to update its use of force and implicit bias training.
I want people of color to know that they're safe in the hands of Missoula's finest.
Engen also made it clear that if any Missoula police officer violates policy, there are consequences.
Our officers know that they're not above law and don't intend to be above the law.
In Missoula, Katie Miller, MTN News.
Thanks, Katie. In a joint statement on Saturday, the city of Missoula and local law enforcement said they stand in solidarity against racism and acts of discrimination. Meanwhile, in Helena, commissioners discussed their intent to take a thorough look at Helena police protocols and standards. They plan to schedule a series of work sessions with the Helena Police Department to gain a better understanding of how they operate. Mayor Wilmot Collins agreed with the proposal, saying he has received a lot of emails and letters asking the city to address the subject and believes this is a good opportunity for everyone. Now we head to eastern Montana with a look at high waters. Multiple homes along the Yellowstone River in Shepherd are surrounded by water. Although water levels have been dropping for the last few days, the river is expected to hover around flood stage through the weekend. Homeowners in the area are being asked to take some precautions as high flows have caused significant erosion along the banks. Emergency service personnel are warning people to avoid recreating on the Yellowstone River this weekend. And obviously this warmth is adding to our rivers. Meteorologist Ed McIntosh is here in the Weather Center with the very latest. Ed.
That's right. And fortunately, those areas along the Yellowstone are starting to get a little better. In fact, the flood warning there has been canceled, although we're still seeing it in the Clarks Fork of the Yellowstone. But Thursday is also the day when we get the latest drought outlook, and you can see areas to our south as we start looking through Colorado, Northern California, and Oregon. Still some extreme drought there, but southwest Montana and areas of western North Dakota continue to be a concern as far as dry weather. Butte, Bozeman, Dillon, you can see the dry conditions there, but you're also right in the bullseye for the potential of some stronger thunderstorms by tomorrow afternoon and evening. We'll take a look at where the biggest threat is for today in a few minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Ed. Well, Missoula County, the first in the state to adopt a voter-approved fuel tax. County voters backed the local option fuel tax, passing the measure by a little more than 1%. Now, the tally was close after initial results were released early on election night, but the margin in favor of the 2-cent tax has grown. Missoula County estimates the 2-cent tax will collect around $400,000 each year from tourists and net $1.1 million overall. Most of the money will go into a special account dedicated only to road construction and maintenance, while 1% will be used to reimburse the retail fuel seller. In Gallatin County, Sheriff Brian Gutkin says the passage of 2 new levies to fund search and rescue efforts and the 911 dispatch center could make a life and death difference. Search and rescue will add 3 full-time employees, while the 911 center will build out a completely new radio system to allow communications with areas, some close to Bozeman, that cannot currently be reached. And Broadwater County voters approved a public safety levy, but just barely. 51% of voters said yes to the measure. Sheriff Wynn Meehan says without the levy, he would have had to start to lay off people in the sheriff's office. He says the money from the levy, along with a federal grant, will pay for adding 2 deputies to serve the southern end of the county near Three Forks. And in Billings, School District 2 leaders made it official. Ballots for a $1.6 million elementary school levy will be mailed out on June 17th for the July 7th election. The levy would add almost $20 a year onto the property taxes of homes valued at $200,000. It will cover operational costs for kindergarten through 8th grade. The elementary district had a $4.3 million deficit this past school year. Well, we have more ahead on your MTN statewide news. America's largest movie chain may not make it through this pandemic. We'll have those details after the break. The time now is 12:08, but first, Ed McIntosh is in next with your statewide weather forecast.